Well, hello, strangers. Welcome or welcome back to Neon Static. I'm your host, Vi, which is short for a name no one ever guesses. But I'll give you a hint. It's not viscosity. Today's story comes from a friend of mine in the house flipping business. It's story 88, and it goes like this. I work with my uncle to flip houses. I've learned a lot from the old guy. For example, patience. The point of a house flip is to make as much of a return as possible on your investment, meaning snapping up homes that aren't picture perfect or in high demand. Hell, in any demand at all. Sometimes the sellers are a little too optimistic about their chances. You have to wait until the weeks pass and the reality of a couple of mortgages weighs in on them. And then the price comes down to something more reasonable. I mean, it's business. Both sides are trying to get their best result. But trying to ask turnkey prices for a house with no bathroom, the tattoo of mold on the unfinished basement floor, and my uncle's personal favorite, the DIY special of load-bearing drywall. Well, someone's going to have their house sitting empty, no takers, for a long time. And in that long time, mischief can occur. Kids, mostly. It's a pretty rural area. It's annoying, but it's usually just mischief. You walk into the living room and bang, someone's drawn their hangdown on the wall and signed it in unsteady spray paint letters. Sometimes, in fact, lately more than a few times, a distressing amount of houses are turning up with missing copper in the walls, too. That's not a good sign for our little BFE community, so far from the nearest city that we know everyone in town, and drifters don't seem to find their way out here. That's the job, though. You take patient, cautious gambles and hope that whatever you gamble on pays off. Those DIY nightmare houses can be just surface-level hacks and decor, hiding untouched hardwood floors or original fireplaces hidden behind a new facade of 2x4s and gray paint. A couple of swipes of primer and any doodles the local kids have left are gone, with a push broom to take care of the kid trash, empty soda bottles, chip bags, general garbage. And if you walk into a house and see the drywall punched out and pipes missing, well, you call in the cops, but otherwise, you budget for those kind of things. And you go check the locks and the windows. In 4 years, that was the worst we ever dealt with in our small Midwest community. I was beginning to feel a bit like a pro. Unc was even letting me run point. I'd show up first, assess the house for what to knock out and in what order, and then I'd present the plans to him when he rolled in later. So when we won a house on auction, it was just another day when I rocked up to it alone. I glanced about the front of it. It was autumn, and I'd gotten there early. The sun hadn't come up yet, but there was an ambient glow in the air from the sole streetlight 4 houses down. It shone over the front yard, its expanse choked with foxtail weeds turned golden and rustling. The house numbers were faded paint on the curb, but I could make them out if I squinted. 563 for 563 Dawkins Drive. I tested the steps up to the porch warily. Wet air makes untreated wood punky, and it only takes one heart-stopping foot-through-the-floor moment to cement in your mind that, in this line of work, even the floors are unsafe. I didn't feel any spongy spots as I made my way to the door, though, so I slid the key into the lock and went to turn it. No click, no feedback from the tumbler, but the door swung open. The air around me dropped another degree as I realized the house had been left unlocked. Well then, I had grabbed my phone and looked at the time. It was 5:07 a.m. Unc wouldn't be up for another couple of hours. Even if he were, I thought about the trust he'd been showing me more and more recently. It was hard-earned by my working hard and not needing to be told what to do so much. It made me proud when he'd hand-wave something, or on the occasion when talking to someone on the phone he'd say, "Nah, I'll send the kid. He can take care of that. Calling him from the porch without even going inside, that could jeopardize it. I sucked in a breath, and then I put my hand to the knob and pushed it. The door opened easily and without so much as a creak. I stepped inside, subconsciously wiping my palm on my jeans. That air tended to make everything else feel like it was sweating, even doorknobs. The house was tidy. I was immediately scanning around for the signs that someone had broken in, but everything appeared untouched. From what I could see, the walls were intact, the floral wallpaper uninterrupted in its sprawl through the entryway. I put my hand to the wall, reaching for the light switch, and I flipped on all three. 2 did nothing, but 1 lit up the overhead light. I scanned the walls again. No punches, no graffiti. The baseboards were worn and scuffed, but it read normal household wear and tear, not wild kegger. What was unexpected, though, was that it was furnished. The console table still stood in the hallway. The mirror was still on the wall, with a couple of hooks for hats and stuff, too. I was at a loss. Unc was all about the bottom line, and I'd never gotten any sort of story about the houses we flipped. Maybe this was an estate, or a mortgage default, and they'd walked away. It happened sometimes, more in the bigger cities, but as I looked around, my guess felt true. All the furniture was still in place, like someone still lived here. That thought gave me a nasty little shot of fright. I stilled and I listened for movement. It was a single-story house at least, but it hadn't been updated to the trendy open-floor concept. That meant there were lots of walls, lots of separated rooms, lots of places for someone to hide. The thought slid into my mind. Damn it. Well, no way through it but to do it, I thought back. I straightened up and began walking through the house, making sure to step extra loudly on the floor that changed beneath my feet, from honey-colored hardwood to off-white tiles in the kitchen and laundry room, to heather blue carpet in the living room and on the hallway to where the bedrooms and bathrooms were. In each room, I glared about. I hoped the expression on my face was so confident and calm that, if I happened to catch movement, someone slinking around in the shadows, well, they'd see me and run. As with the vestibule, there was no signs of kid or tweaker damage. Surprisingly, there was little sign of DIY, too. The house was empty. It felt empty, even as my eyes glanced at fully furnished rooms. Not new stuff drug in, mismatched and stained from elements either. All the decor touches were decidedly early 90s, like someone hadn't changed it for 30 years. Crown molding, wallpaper, all the left-behind color being hazy blue and dusty purple pink, pass-throughs and thickly varnished oak cabinets. My original guess was growing on me. Maybe I was standing in the home of someone who'd retired. They'd decided they liked what was in 1992 and saw no reason to change. I was making notes on my phone as I walked through the house, noting scuffs or easy renovations to make the house look fresh, new, as opposed to how it felt now, forgotten, lifeless. Painting the walls here is like putting makeup on a corpse. Jesus! First the thought of someone skulking about in the many separated rooms, and now my brain was making the comparison between painting these walls and painting a dead person for a funeral. I shook my head like the bad thoughts were cobwebs, hoping to dissipate them, before I imagined something that made me break my vow not to call my uncle for backup. I took another breath. I'd passed the chunky plastic HVAC controller as I'd moved through the house, and I'd turned on the air, just the fan, to get some movement in this too-still house. I was used to a little damage, a little floor rot, some dicks scratched in the mirrors in the bathrooms like a Love's truck stop. But this house felt like no one had been in it since the whimsical geese in country bonnets that smiled at me from the wallpaper had been in style. It felt like a time capsule, like a tomb. I decided that was why my thoughts were going to such extremes. I was used to dirty, trashed houses, and this was just different than what I was used to. That's why I felt so off about it. Also, hadn't I been stomping through this house for a good 10 minutes, only pausing to take notes like recock baseboards? Yet there was no sense of movement or sounds of someone scurrying about in the back of the house as I approached. I was alone in this house, and in the dim early hours and weirdness of it not being a total wreck, well, it made it feel weird. And that was all. I turned on heel to march back through the living room into the hallway that led to the bedrooms and bathrooms. As I approached, I finally spotted it. Graffiti of a kind. The recess of the hallway where the living room wall made a turn from wallpaper flowers, watercolor tulips, to paint. I saw a ruler-like etching on the off-white paint wall. I stepped closer and, yep, it was measurement lines. Heights marked on the wall in pen and pencil with names and dates. This made me smile, smirk even. It was a family home, everything left as it was liked. I crouched down and took a look at the bottom line and date. Brandon, May 1992. That was the lowest line, and barely a foot off the ground. Baby height, I guessed. I scanned the wall up, looking for other names. I found Julie, May 1992, at my hip height. My phone dinged in my hand, and it made me jump. It was a notification, but it sort of jarred me out of my reverie. I was there to make Unc a good estimate on repairs for 563 Dawkins, not wander around like a moron playing Hardy Boy Mysteries. No more bullshitting around. I strode down the hallway and turned into the first room on the left. The rest of my inspection from there was uneventful. Bathroom with towels in place, but the water in the toilet looked pretty low from lack of use. Master bedroom, big closet that wasn't quite a walk-in, and master bath. Linen closet. All the closets were empty, as had been the cabinets and fridge in the kitchen. I took that as another sign that I was right. Someone had passed maybe, and started with clothes and food. Stuff that they needed to get rid of before it rotted, or was easy to give away, like jackets. In all the rooms, I noted only small wear and tear, no big damage. However, we were going to need a dumpster or to contact someone who did consignment to get rid of all of this furniture in the way. Maybe we could donate it. It seemed to be in good shape. I moved through the house with purpose, and my heart grew lighter and lighter as I cleared each room, finally coming to the last room to check. The first door on the right of the hallway. It was a bedroom. It, as the others, had everything, still furnished. The bunk bed was shoved against the wall, while the top bunk was piled with blankets, jackets, what looked like just kid crap. The bottom bunk was still made up with a quilt covered in baseballs and gloves and bats. To its left, a bookshelf still sagged. Damn that wet air. Under the weight of books, toys, more assorted kid bric-a-brac. Faded carousel horse wallpaper on the wall, and a couple of pictures still hung there. A teddy bear doing prayers at its bedside, and a caricature of a boy, sandy brown hair spouting out from under a baseball cap, bucked teeth overemphasized in his wide grin. Brandon's room. That uneasy feeling I got from the unlocked door trickled in again. This room appeared frozen in time like the rest of the house, only overwhelmingly so, as from this room, they hadn't removed the linens off the bed. The closet stood open. From where I was, I could see clothes hung there, cheery reds and yellows and blues. I was on edge, eyes glancing about. This room, more than any other place in the house, felt like the kid still lived there, like I'd stepped back in time and found his room, and he would come bustling through the door to play with his Legos or his Atari at any moment. Unlike the rest of the house, makeup on a corpse, this room felt alive. I was even getting the insane notion that I should get down and look under the bed, for where kids always kept their monsters. This is too weird. I should call Unc, shot through my head. But my stubborn ass didn't listen. No, I told myself. Just take the notes. Then I could get out of this creepy-ass room. Shrine, my thoughts interrupted. I paused and then said aloud, "I can get out of this creepy-ass room, just a kid's bedroom, and move on." I was angry at myself for being such a freaking wimp about this. To prove it to myself, I got down and, indeed, checked under the bed, even sweeping my hands underneath it to draw out more kid debris, wadded up papers, an abandoned stuffed animal, some books, and some kind of gritty texture on the carpet there. I sat up, pulled back my hands and looked at them. They had like brownie crumbs on them, sticky ones. I groaned, looking for a hamster cage, because I was pretty sure in my fit of proving to myself that there was nothing to fear, I'd gone and run my hands through the kid's pet's poop. I looked up, and my eyes lighted on that caricature again. His little grin seemed like a smirk, those buck teeth pointy, his eyes narrowed at me instead of squinted and smile. Without thinking, I bolted backwards, backing all the way up to the hallway, wanting to put as much distance as I could between me and this creepy-ass room. I looked back up and down the hallway, wiping my hands compulsively on my jeans, switching my phone from one to the other as I did. And like my thought, my giving in had summoned him. My phone rang in my hand. I looked at it. "Uncle," it said. I picked up, feet still rooted to the spot, myself now a kid ready to ask for help from a grown-up. Unc said my name, and then all in a rush, "You sleepin' or something?" I answered, "What? No, I'm at the house." "You ain't." His response was teasing. "Slept in, I guess." I looked back into Brandon's room. Shrine, whatever, suddenly miffed at being accused of slacking when I'd been on edge this whole time. I told him I didn't. I'm standing in the hallway. I got notes on everything but the bedrooms and bathrooms. I guess we'll need a dumpster to empty. Unc's voice cut in. The teasing was gone. "Adam," he said, saying my name. "I'm here, and you ain't. What are you playing at?" I was at a loss. I looked back down the hallway to the front door, a clear shot from where I stood. I'm literally staring at the front door. I'm in here. Walk in and you can't miss me. I heard over the phone the sound of a door. It creaked. Then feet on a porch. A sucked-in breath. "I see your car. What are you doing parked all the way down there?" I was exasperated, edgy, on my last nerve when I snapped. "I'm parked in front of the house. 563 Dawkins Drive. Where are you?" And as my voice rose in pitch, so did it in volume, into a near shout. I turned back, facing Brandon's shrine. It wasn't a bedroom, not with the kid's clothes, not with the height marks that stopped before the kid was grown. And while my mind was too slow to pick up on what my uncle was saying, my eyes were working just fine. Adjusted to the dim light, they stared right into the room, at the bunk bed, at the top bunk, which is why I saw the pile of blankets, jackets, and bric-a-brac when it moved. All my breath left me in a groaning cry, and I was tearing out of that house like the devil was on my heels before I could even recognize it. My phone was still clamped in my hand, and tinny, I could hear my uncle asking, "What was that? Who screamed?" I didn't answer. I just dashed through the entryway. I pulled the door open and stumble-sprinted down the stairs. If I'd missed a punky board and my foot had gone through, I would have chewed the thing off like a wild animal to get away from that house. But they held true, and I was pelting down the cracked concrete walkway, hearing my uncle's voice over my phone. And in the air. My head whipped left, and I saw the man. His face was reddening as he jogged over to me, from a few houses down. We crashed into a hug, and it took me what felt like whole minutes before I was able to suck in enough wind to not feel like I was dying. Over my huffing and puffing, Unc helped me realize that the early dawn light and ambience from the streetlight hadn't been quite enough, not with the paint as worn as it was, and how lucky I was that 568 Dawkins, too, was a foreclosure. I'd been in the wrong house. Luck was right. If that retiree I'd imagined had been home, one look at me wandering through her house could have resulted in the cops being called, or her having a heart attack, or a shotgun blast taking half my torso out. It took some time, with me pacing, Uncle sitting on the curb, for me to tell him what I'd seen in that house. He was wary about calling anyone. He didn't want me up even on the possibility of B&E, breaking and entering, but with the movement in the creepy kids' room, he figured he could at least call it in as a possible squatter. So we did. The police were curious about me, asking too many questions in that way that they must know makes a kid nervous as hell. But eventually, they took our contact info and left the house, telling my uncle to be sure the kid is a little more careful. Chastened, I followed my uncle to the actual 563 Dawkins and got to work. 563 Dawkins, unlike 568, was a disaster. It was full of trash, graffiti, holes punched into walls, and a corner that I'm pretty sure had become somebody's urinal. However, this was normal and familiar. That other house had left me with nothing but nerves and questions. Even more so when, coming back out later that day for lunch, we saw yellow tape stretched across the entrance to that house. A couple of cops, not the same ones as that morning, loitered outside. My uncle forbade me to talk to them. He was still keyed up that, if a crime was discovered, somehow it'd land on his idiot nephew. His unease matched mine. I left it alone, both out of respect for him and because of something else. As soon as I got home and took off my clothes to launder that night, I caught sight of the area on my thighs where I'd rubbed my hands after encountering the forgotten hamster poops under the kid's bed. I shuddered, then hit it with the extra strength spray cleaner to get the area pre-cleaned, hoping the washing machine would be able to erase them entirely. The cleaner was Oxy something. It's an enzymatic, and it proudly boasted the cleaning power of hydrogen peroxide on its label. And as I watched the area I'd sprayed, I saw those brown rubbed stains begin to bubble and turn red. What was under that bed? It sure wasn't poop. And what had moved in the top bunk? Was it a squatter? Or was it something else? Sometimes I close my eyes and I can still see that caricature. And I wonder, what happened there? And that's story 88, which answers the age-old question of what you could find in a landlord special that would be worse than them painting over outlets and window trim sealing the window shut until you shimmy it open with a spatula. If you'd like to share a story or your thoughts on this one, social media and email are in the description, and the comments are below this video, conveniently located for you and for me, because I do read them and I do answer them. Otherwise, there's liking, there's subscribing, or there's just setting a reminder on your phone to come back next Tuesday at 3, where I'll be transmitting yet another story, true, scary, and not told anywhere else, for you. Until then, stay strange, stay safe, and take care, strangers.